So, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Well, delighted to be with you.
So, the first question that we would like to ask you is, can you talk about the Define Entrepreneurship campaign at Babson College and how this could inform the discussions that are about to begin?
Well, what's absolutely clear is historically there's been a very narrow definition of entrepreneurship in the world, and it was limited largely to startups. And we've tried to expand the definition to a whole host of activities, what we call at Babson entrepreneurship of all kinds. And we've engaged in a conscious social media perspective right now to engage the broader global community in the process of contributing to that definition of entrepreneurship of all kinds. So the reality is I don't much care about whether it's a social enterprise or a for-profit enterprise. I don't care about whether you're trying to use entrepreneurship to perpetuate a family enterprise beyond the first, second, third generation, or to figure out how to engage in entrepreneurial activity inside a large organization. And most importantly, the opportunities for social innovation are plenty. So my hope is we end up with a whole portfolio of very interesting startups spanning a whole bunch of activity here, and we are able to recognize one of the most powerful things about spurring on entrepreneurial activity is it's linked to two essential activities that we know. One is education, and the second is mentorship. So you're really picking up the mantle on the mentorship agenda.
One of the concerns that we've heard from particularly the high-tech startups is that the baby boomer generation are not tech savvy. What are your thoughts on that, that kind of comment?
Well, first of all, the question of what skills are required to be in a tech startup is largely dependent on how you define a tech startup. Okay?
Right.
So there's no question in my mind, there are some businesses that are heavily reliant on technology that actually require deep engineering or scientific expertise. That doesn't mean there aren't roles for people who don't have that deep science in the enterprise, but certainly not as a leader-founder.
Right. I mean, my belief is that the fundamentals of business, they don't change.
Well, the fundamentals don't change, but the reality of it is the underlying deep understanding of the business model and where you can go with it is heavily dependent on your understanding of the technology that's invested in the core.
Right. And that's not that is that age agnostic?
Oh, no question.
Right.
Yeah,
that's great.
This has nothing to do with age.
Yeah. What are the top 3 critical success factors of startups that that founders should seek advice on today?
So there are a bunch of issues. I'll give you the first 3 that come to mind as being obvious.
Great.
So the first issue is to be very clear about the fact that it is most likely that your initial funding will come from friends and family, not from venture capital and not from some big bank gift or grant. And so can you scale down your idea enough to get started and to use that start as a test of feasibility and capacity to be able to play with the idea and grow. And so clear here at Babson, we've reconfigured the incubator into a venture accelerator that mimics that logic and gets people to understand that you should actually take relatively inexpensive steps to get going to really test the feasibility of your idea. Number 2 is to understand that as you bring like-minded partners on, whether they're people who are going to work in your enterprise, people who are going to invest in your enterprise, or peer mentors or boomer mentors, they are all likely to have ideas. And there's a marvelous phrase that comes in a new book that came out called The Founder's Dilemma that says, do you want to be rich or do you want to be king? Okay? And the notion is what I tend to find is an over-dependence on the individual and the idea. That they're so wrapped up on their conception of the idea that they're generally not open to feedback and generally not open to reshaping. And from my perspective, that's absolutely a script for failure. The third piece is obviously what in the tech industry they call the pivot. Whatever you think your business model is, it's not going to end up being that way. And so not only how do you remain open to feedback, but how do you remain open to explicit recognition of the fact that the model you conceive is not the model that's going to work in the real world?
I think that's like, I think that if people watching can actually keep that last point in their minds going forward, because you're going to actually be listening to 40 different people address the top 3 challenges facing your business today. And if you keep an open mind, it may well be that your idea changes of what it is that you're actually doing.
And I think that's healthy.
Yeah.